right, people, so hopefully you should be hearing me by now. Loose cable, loose cable. So the Halloween gremlins are already starting. They're already starting up with me. They're like, oh, don't do this project. Don't do it. But we are. And Dave is confirming, yeah, sound. So we are ready to go. So why don't we rewind like that whole segment? We're going to rewind this way, you know, and now I'm back. All right. So you see all these awesome things that I have. So what are we doing? Well, first of all, I gotta, welcome all of my peeps. We got Dave Beck here, San Juan, Brian Palmer, and of course, Kurt Benning. I saw him earlier. So hey guys, it's so awesome to see all of you, and I am super excited for this. So welcome to our low fidelity design and prototyping course. And that is like super fancy for just like building stuff cheap, but that actually works and, gets us to the next step without spending a lot of time and a lot of money. Now, those of you that have been watching and participating for a while, remember last year's project. Well, and you all know me. We get an idea in our heads and we just start building, right? And then we just kind of fix stuff along the way. It's a great way to do it, but it takes forever. And you're going to take a lot longer to get to your goalpost. And once you do, you've spent material and time only to find out, just like we did, that certain things could have been done better, and had it been planned out, well, I think we could have maybe even gotten to the goalpost. So I had half a spider done for Halloween. So it was only half as scary. So we're going to go for full scare this time, but low prototype version. Now, I even came up with these cool little drawings, which is like a step above old Rachel, Old Rachel would have been like, guys, let's just start building, and that's old Rachel voice. We're getting rid of old Rachel. So I posted this for you guys both on social media, just a couple snippets of it, just a couple ideas of maybe what we want to do. And last year we built a giant spider and we wanted to include some very cool elements. And as time progressed, because we were just kind of tinkering till we found out what worked and what didn't, well, we had to start eliminating a lot of it. So hopefully this time we'll be able to include as much of this stuff as possible. So we got our designs together here. I say we start building. Yeah, let's just start, kind of over in this section and let's start building the thing. So I got balsa wood. I got a couple skull heads. Oh, I'm sorry. That was old Rachel again. Old Rachel just came out and we were just going to start to fling this stuff together. No, today we are going to take our time and go through the engineering design process, which is the exact same process used by NASA to solve any problem they want to, getting a ship to Mars, going to the moon again. So the nice thing with this process is that some of you are like, well, I don't want to do engineering. I may not even want to build some mechanisms. Maybe I want to devise a new recipe for a cake. Maybe I want to design a new handbag that holds electronics in a more efficient and easy to find fashion. Maybe there's a charger in there or something, and just do something that's not out there. Or you can apply it to animatronics as well. So just because it's called the engineering design process doesn't mean it has to be engineering. Although for us, we're going to be combining a little bit of art, a little bit of engineering. And this time we are going to be building a prototype, and a much smaller scale prototype, to make sure all of our mechanisms work before we move on to something more final. Plus Halloween is coming up. It is the perfect time to test this thing. And prototypes are important that way because, as we found out many times, if you're planning on putting together a product to sell, I'm doing this for fun and for my own personal learning, the last thing you want to do is put together an amazing, beautiful, final looking product, sell it, and kind of let your users test it, and then start getting that negative feedback. Yeah, so we want to get all that kind of stuff out of the way first. So Dave says artistic engineering. Yeah, we're mashing the two up, hence the name of our community. So if you guys haven't checked it out, definitely check out our artistic engineering community. We have courses every month, live every week, plus our workshop socials where we get together via Zoom, do community builds. It's an opportunity to ask each other questions when we're stuck, or heck, show off our cool makes, look at this that I made, So we're going to put these designs aside, you know, as remnants of old Rachel. But it's nice to start that way sometimes. You know, sometimes it's just, I knew I wanted to do a cool spider. As you saw, I had the idea of a spider butt. You know, I liked a skull spider butt right there. I thought that would look pretty cool. And here I have, you know, a close-up of it. And I thought for the abdomen, it would be kind of neat if it was like old looking with the spider kind of like took up residence in here instead of doing a whole abdomen. Now, this is a low fidelity version. So that means that it's not going to need paint or all the fancifulness, because prototypes isn't just like one thing. It actually falls into kind of a wide range. And so here are, you know, this is kind of like what you're looking at with the lo-fi ones, the low fidelity ones being very simple. And you can see the three elements we're going to be working with: the visual design, the content of it, you know, like the pieces, the legs, the actual head, and the interactivity. How much of it do we want, you know, how much of the functionality do we want working, and what scope do we want? So lo-fi is great for like when you're testing out ideas. It allows you to shift directions really fast. Whereas hi-fi, now you're getting a prototype that looks almost like, especially if you're like all the way on like this end right here, you know, it's a product now, or it's a prototype that is almost like the final product. I mean, it is just like, you know, maybe a couple things here and there need to be changed up, but it's almost ready to go to market. And you can start your project anywhere along here. And it just depends on the type of project, where you are in developing it. So I love starting at the, you know, the lo-fi end, because like I said, it's really inexpensive, lets you test out your ideas, and then once your mechanisms are working, then it's about painting it. It's about like adding all of the cool stuff. If you remember our Franken lightning detector project, and that's on the YouTube channel, if you look that up, we pretty much went like hi-fi with that. We took our time to develop a really cool Frankenstein looking castle, painted it to the nines. We even added vining, terrain, moss, all that kind of stuff, because by then we kind of had a good idea of like what we were doing. So the level of prototyping also depends on your skill level. If you're about to attempt something for the first time, lo-fi is usually a great way to do it. So take the movie Aliens with Sigourney Weaver and those really cool alien mechanisms. Well, it turned out that's not even like how they started prototyping. They wanted to get an idea of the size and how was this alien going to attack. You know, was it going to be like a jumper? Was it going to like grab you with the claws? So all they did was fill trash bags with like paper in the general shape, and then with cables kind of practiced how this thing was going to move. Really cheap, and if the movement looked super lame, well, it took no time and no money. So that's pretty much what we're doing here with our household items. So let's, you know, see what this process is all about. So what's the first step? It's clearly not building. Old Rachel would have been like tearing into this stuff already, but no, you know, gotta like take some duct tape my hands down and just not touch anything. So what's the first step in this whole thing, right? You know, so the first step is ask. We're gonna ask, not necessarily what we're building, but why are we building this thing? You know, then once we figured out why we're building it, who we're building it for, we're going to start imagining. And this is the fun part. The imagining is the fun part. And it includes other steps. So you'll see the engineering design process online if you want further reading on it. Described in different amounts of steps. Some of them are way more steps, some of them are fewer steps, but you're gonna see it's all kind of the same thing, maybe named a little bit different. Some of the sub steps might be broken out into bigger steps. It's up to you, but we're going to be following, you know, pretty much in the same order. So imagine is really cool. And, you know, this is the part where you actually take your time, you research what's out there, you start to really brainstorm. And for imagining, it's more quantity over quality. You want to try and jot down as many ideas as you can for what you're building, the functionality and the look and feel. Then we plan it out, which I kind of like jumped the gun and started to kind of like draw some ideas. You know, we might scrap some of this, you know, or maybe I had a good seed of planning. Plus, this is not the first prototype. So I've had a chance to look at what's online, did a little bit of research. So I start to get an idea of probably what, we can get away with. Then of course we create. Yeah, that's like the fun building stuff, so the hands stay duct taped to the workbench until we get to the create step. And then we test it. This is on Halloween night. We can test it, ask the kids, ask the parents what they thought of it before we spend all this time building a more final version. And that gives us an opportunity to improve. And then we can keep going around again. Now, if you make it from ask all the way to improve in one fell swoop without any mistakes, well, got news for you. Your project probably sucks. Meaning you probably could have done better, because the objective is to fail. We want to do what I call productive failing, and this is where I find you make your greatest leaps. I started, if you've never prototyped and you're watching this and well, how do I go from trying to sketch something out to actually building something? The way I did it was you watch a bunch of YouTube videos of people doing it, and you think or at least I thought I could shortcut this. I'm just going to watch a whole bunch of people build stuff, and then I'll see how the mechanisms work, and then I can build it, right? No, because then when you want to build something custom, it's tough to find all the pieces and know how to put it together without actually practicing. So practicing is really important. And what you're going to find is the more you fail, it's like nitrous. At first you're going to make little leaps because you're playing it safe, right? But the more you fail, the bigger the jumps of your successes start to be. And so when you measure yourself from a year ago, what you were doing to, now or a year from now, you're going to be like, wow, I made huge leaps. And you're going to see that directly correlates to the number of fails. So we want to strive to fail. We want the failing to be so monumental. That's why I do these live. Some of you guys have been with me for a while, have seen some monumental fails, like the kind where it's your face breaks your fall, but it's asphalt. Then you scrape the face on the asphalt, that level. That's the level we're going for. So let's start our fails here. So let's see here, ask. That was the first step, right? Okay. So, and I'm going to grab some note paper here so we can take notes. And you guys may not, maybe you're not doing a spider project. Maybe you're Halloween props are lame. I don't want to build a Halloween prop. So whatever project you're working on, you can target these questions or these mini steps to your particular project. So the first thing we have to identify is the need. And it's not what are we building today? A better approach is, why are we building this? Because that really gets to the true, what do you want this thing to do? What's going to fulfill your happiness or the happiness of others, But, fulfilling your own happiness is important too. It makes it easier for you to give. If you have it, you can give it, right? So for our need, and I'm going to be honest with you, for the need, maybe you're building it because you want to build a cool new recipe, like I was saying, that's not out there, and because maybe you want to introduce a new line to a grocery store. Maybe with our haunts here, maybe you want to build a portfolio and maybe pitch it to Spirit Halloween, or do cool haunts for local Halloween festivals in your area, or maybe you want to get into theme park building. Maybe you're building something that benefits your community. But I'm going to tell you, it could be totally selfish. Oh yeah, the need, it's allowed. You could be totally selfish. So what is my need, which might be different than your guys' need? My need, I would say, is for personal growth. I'm not building this to put a smile on someone's face or a scare on someone's face, although that would help the objective. The biggest thing that I want to get out of this is just become a better animatronics builder and be able to build more complex mechanisms. And again, you do this by trying new mechanisms that you haven't done before, but you can borrow from some of the old mechanisms as a core and then build on top. So my need is, I'm going to say it purely selfish. My need is to, for learning growth. I'll call it learning growth. All right. So, I want to learn, but I also want to build more complex mechanisms that I have in the past. So that's going to be like an objective of mine. Build more complex mechs. Because one of the things I like is the realism when you go through a haunted house or you go to, you know, Disney or Universal theme parks and you ride the rides, all those animatronics that look real and they move, you know, just like they do in real life. I love that complexity because each of them has their own character as well. So that would be fun to learn. So my need is my own personal growth. And your guys' need might be different. I don't know. All right, so what else do we got here? Okay, target population. So even if you're not making a product to sell or anything like that, this is still pretty important, you know, because it'll tailor the look and functionality to what you're trying to accomplish. So for me, and you might be trying to sell it, you know, again, if you're making a product that, whether it's digital or like an app, you need to know who you're selling it to, because the success or failure of, you know, your ability to make money is whether or not people are going to like this thing, you know. So you need to know who you're selling it to increase the chances that they're going to like it, you know. So for me, my population, well, it's pretty much me, but the people that are going to be interacting with it are parents and trick-or-treaters. So parents and kids. So I got my little list, you know, going here, and your population might be even more specific. Maybe you're making something for another country, a country that needs help purifying water, that needs help with access to water. So you're making a product or a system that can deliver that. And it's, you know, not for here, but, you know, for there. Or you can be making something that is specific to your area, whether you live in Texas, Florida, or, you know, up north, maybe something for the snow and the wintry weather. So it can be location specific, it can be ethnic group specific if you're making products, it can be just for men, just for women, if it's clothing, if it's, you know, all of that. So, you know, the more you know about your population, the better chances you are going to have to build something that's going to tailor to them and you're going to be able to sell. Because at the end of the day, we're going to have fun building, but if your objective is to start a business, well, you know, you need to get some revenue going so you can build more products. So San Juan is saying practice makes perfect, and Dave is also saying failing is learning. It is indeed. It gets a bad rap, you know. And Dave's saying my need is to discover if that darker skull on Rachel's left is a Bigfoot skull. This one right here, my left, right here. It could be. It could be. I got two. See, this one has a bottom jaw and this one does not. And for prototyping purposes, we can sculpt one of these and make it all beautiful, but that's not like very lo-fi. You know, that's old Rachel. Old Rachel would be, you know, doing that. Before we even know this worked, we would spend probably 6 hours sculpting something. So no, we're not going to do that. So yeah, we'll call this like mini Bigfoot right here. And oh, you're left. So this guy right here. Yeah, so we can call him, he looks a little more like you know, a little more primate because of the way the eyes are, you know, or alien almost. So yeah, maybe he could be our baby Bigfoot right there. All right, where were we? So yes, most of these streams are build, but we're going to do it this way. We're going to do a lot of planning this stream, so that way we have all of our pieces together. So the requirements. Okay, the requirements. So what do we want this thing to do? And if I can spell right, requirements I was doing. So I'm thinking like, what functionality do we want this thing to have? So I think, well, it's got to have like LED eyes and sound effects. I think like if we're doing like a Halloween prop, come on, we have to have the cheesy red LED eyes and maybe some creepy like spider sound effects. And what else? Well, one of the things we worked on last time was a web shooter that was motion sensor. And I think we can improve on that. So let's do a web shooter of some sort. Maybe it can be motion censored, you know, as well. You know, the kid comes by or the group of kids and then webbing will fly out of this spider. And let's see, I don't want to add too many, you know, it's typical Rachel. Oh, I know. One of the things that I kind of regretted, and I see a lot of spiders, not very many of them have leg movement. They're just kind of like there, and maybe their eyes light up. There's some jumping spiders. I've seen those at the Spirit Halloween store, but their legs just like wriggle. So that can be like a fallback. If you use some wire, you can use a vibrating motor, I guess, and it would make the legs kind of like tremble and shake like that. But I would like them to kind of move a little bit. I haven't seen anything yet where the legs move. So some kind of like, I don't know, leg movement mech. Something to make the legs move. And this might be ambitious, but so the legs move, either that's what moves the spider because the spider can kind of like go after the group of kids, or so we want some kind of like motorized situation. So it can either be through the legs, or maybe we put it like on a base and it's kind of like an RC car, but some kind of like movement. Most Halloween props are just like static. They're just like, there you go, and it lights up, it makes sound. There's appendages that come out and move, but it just doesn't, it'll stay where it is. So it would be kind of neat to make ours different in that it actually moves. So I'll call it overall movement. Like the whole thing moves, I guess. I don't know what a succinct name for that is, but we'll call it like, overall movement. So I think we should probably cut it off there, and you can add visual things that you want here. So we can also say, for the visual side, we want like a cool skull, abdomen. We want, I guess we'll go with like typical 8-legged spider. I've seen a lot of them with, less legs, so they wiggle around, more. Maybe we want it to be black and red. I'm just throwing out, ideas there. Like we should come up with like a color scheme, and I'll just put in parentheses here, color scheme. Like we definitely wanted to have a color scheme. Now these visual elements, because we're doing lo-fi, not all of them will be carried out. Like the color scheme, we probably won't get to painting because the focus is, right here. But I'm making a list here in case you guys are working on something that's maybe not so low fidelity. It's like you can make certain portions low fidelity and then certain portions, more high or medium, however you want. So next, what are we doing here? Ooh, constraints. Nobody likes constraints. I'm like, what the heck constraints? All right. So what are some of our constraints? Now, if you're working with clients, probably the first one that comes to mind is budget. So in terms of budget, getting a handle on what your client's budget is. Our budget, because I'm building this for learning and fun, doesn't super matter, but at the same time, I don't want to spend $1,000 learning. I think I can spend that learning in a much more efficient way. So, and guys, if you start having ideas for this stuff, start throwing it in. That's part of brainstorming. There's no wrong in doing some pre-brainstorming. So Dave is saying a motorized drive, for overall movement. So I can do like a, like a DC motor is what I'm thinking he's thinking of. Or San Juan saying drop on a cable, like when you run into their web, drop on a cable. So I think San Juan's trying to say one of two things, like either the spider is up high and a cable comes down, like, really fast onto the people, below, or do you mean that you put the spider on a cable, you tie a cable between two strings, and the spider goes in between this cable, and that is its movement? So I think San Juan is talking about one of those two. So yes, elaborate for me there on what you mean. But, let's go back to here. So budget, I would like to cap mine at this. I doubt that I'll get here because a lot of the materials that I'm going to be using are left over from other things, you know, and it's lo-fi. So, but a lot of this will come, I don't even think we'll reach this, but it'll come from electronics, you know, some of the cool electronics things that I want to do. And, San Juan said, yeah. So which one? So the drop-down cable from above or the cable going between the tree, or maybe both. No, he can be up above going from tree limb to tree limb and then drop a cable down. So, you know, we can do that as well. So this is like overshooting, but, you know, your client may have a budget. So you want to, you know, kind of keep that in mind. Also, if you're putting a product out, it's important that you look at some of your competitors, because what you don't want to do is make something that has less features and you're going to have to charge your customer more. So you want to keep track of, you know, what materials you're going to use, not just for the prototyping, but for the final as well, because you don't want to overprice yourself out of the market. So budget is one of them. For us, we want to keep this, you know, relatively cheap, and this is like totally overshooting it. But it's very quick to get up to 100, you know, especially with electronics, because typically you don't just buy one, it's cheaper to buy them in bulk. So that's kind of where that number comes from. Time is another constraint. Sometimes if your client is like, well, it's got to be done by Halloween, and you're like, wow, I have like 6 weeks. First, you got to be honest with them as to whether or not you can do it. But, you know, time may have to simplify your project to get it done on time. Our time constraint is Halloween and counting, you know, so we can get a chance to really try it out and get our feedback. So I think that's really most of our constraints right there. We don't want to use any mechanisms that are super, super expensive, only because that Halloween is a once a year event. So I can say frequency. Like, how often are we going to use this thing? So I would say once per year. So even with product, you have to think about your client. These are parents. This is a decor that they'll be using once a year. So what is realistic for somebody to pay for something like this? So, you know, it's great doing some research on your Spirit Halloween store. If you're doing a bag, or if you're, you know, whatever product you're making, kind of do your competitor research out there just to see, I have X amount of features. Does it make sense to charge this amount for the amount that they're going to be using? If it's something someone's going to use every day, or a piece of decor that they're just going to enjoy, or a cool animated lamp that you're going to use every day, heck yeah, you could probably charge way more, you know, way more for that. Other than a super Halloween lovers, I admit I will pay a premium for good Halloween animated decor. So I am one of those, but I think, you know, that audience is not as big, right? All right, so we get our constraints, our desired outcomes. Okay, so it's a little bit like the requirements, but it's more like scope. So I'll call it outcomes, but what it really is scope. Like, how well do we want these things to work, right? So for the LED eyes and sound effects, I'm thinking like for the eyes, I mean, we can create eyelids that blink and all that kind of stuff. I think for this go around, probably just flickering LEDs that turn on and off. You know, maybe they turn on when they sense motion, you know, and then it activates, it turns on. For the web shooter, let's see, what's the scope? They're probably something very simple, an easy mechanism that can be fired in 1 or 2 steps. So maybe like a 1 or 2 step mechanism. And I'm thinking it doesn't go a huge distance. You know, that's tougher to figure out. So it's a short distance. It's like when the kids get up on the patio or the porch. So like a short distance shooter, 1 or 2 step mechanism. It's just pull it, go. We'll talk about our old web shooter a little bit to avoid some of those mistakes. The leg movement. I'm thinking as cool as spider robots are, that's a little involved. So the leg movement, do we want it for function or more for looks? I'm thinking if we get kind of like, not wiggling, but actual leg bending, but maybe just for looks, and we'll use some kind of motorized base or something for the actual movement. So let's see. So for leg movement, we just want like some bending, non-weight supporting, at least for now. And for our movement, overall movement, I think something like an RC car style. Maybe something with Bluetooth that we can control with our phones. And, you know, it doesn't have to be super fast or really maneuverable. We're not going to off-road with this thing. So just some kind of like basic movement, just to kind of follow the person, you know, at medium speed, I think will be kind of a neat feature. So as long as we can get these legs to kind of bend, they're not going to support the weight of the spider. That makes things a lot easier in terms of design. And then for overall movement, maybe some kind of, we could pop it on a base and have it go. So already just the outcome, you know, the scope, the constraints, and the requirements start to kind of shape how big this thing is going to be, how complex it's going to be. It can start pretty simple. You know, we don't have to go so nuts. So the evaluation criteria. All right, so by what criteria do we say, well, this was a huge success? Rachel, you are so amazing. So by what's the measurement of success, I guess I should say. And let me just get it to focus on the writing. Okay, so what's our measurement of success? So the eyes flickering, those are all kind of, you know, easy. I think the toughest one is this leg movement. If we can get it to I'm trying to write, like, not get it to look so cheesy, but, you know, move more realistically than just wiggling. And this is kind of like a subjective type of evaluation. Certain products will have a very objective, measured, tested, you know, result. And because this is like a learning project, you know, for me, success is that we actually learn something. I know a measurement of success is build something new. We've actually built something we haven't built before in terms of mechanisms. You can put nothing caught on fire. That's a big one for me. And so San Juan is saying a motor with a cable that reels in and out like a winch. Okay, so San Juan is talking about the spiders up above and the little, you know, the little webbing comes down and up. Okay, we can do, and yes, that was my next thought. With a motor, and the motor can just like wind and unwind, and we could put the string on a spool, you know, with a little weight. That might be kind of neat. And what is Ripley microwaving? Whatever she wants. She's like, oh, she's busy. I want to go make me some delicious things. She's raiding the fridge, popping in like a pepperoni pizza. And Dave is saying 3 or more kids losing their minds equals success. Okay, I'm gonna put that one down. That's a good one. Horrifying sound. Yes, so Rich has pointed out the sound effects. So yeah, we haven't really talked about the sound effects. So if we're going to do something that's like motion activated, that the motion sensor, we want it to trigger writing, eyes, sound, which means maybe we can get like a little speaker and MP3 player module, and we can load up some like creepy, oh, that'll be fun, loading up some creepy sounds and the web shooter. Now, the measurement of success, you know, if you're making a product, yeah, there's going to be a lot more specific things here that it's got to reach a certain minimum level of performance. So, you know, obviously for us is that if we put it on a motorized base, it actually moves forward, you know, and it's not so sluggish, you know, if it's something where our object is so heavy and the motor, you know, we're going to need a beefier motor. So we're trying to use somewhat lightweight materials. So there's probably more that we'll think of as we go on, but, you know, initially, and of course we're doing this at abbreviated, you know, kind of quick. You usually spend a lot more time just kind of thinking about this, especially population. If you are coming up with a product that's important, the requirements, constraints, and the, you know, budget, you know, that's a huge one. So, you know, we're just kind of going through this rather quickly just to kind of go through the steps because, you know, this is more for personal learning. So, and we want the motion center to do this pretty, you know, pretty reliably here. And let's see where we are on all this. The budget. All right. So we talked about requirements, and a lot of times like requirements will, or the constraints, budget will fall under constraints a lot, you know, because that's always a constraint, but yeah, guess what? Not always. Sometimes the client is doing a big production, big haunted house that is super popular in the area. So the budget is much bigger, and that's less of a constraint. And that's why I like to list budget as its own line item, you know, over here. And this is just to also get us thinking that whether we're building this for fun or for a client or for a new product we want to launch, we definitely want to itemize all of the prototyping materials that we buy, we use, and consume. Because just because I bought this pack of servos a long time ago, say you bought a pack of servos for another client, but you only used 2 of the 4, so now you got 2 left over, you know, for the other client, then you would charge the 2 servos, you know. So just because you have them lying around, it ain't free, you know. You have to charge your 2 servos because you paid for them, right? So you want to come up with a, you know, per item cost, and include prototyping if you move on to final production, what that is, you know. So, you know, are they giving you a prototyping budget, a full, you know, project budget? And that'll come for those of you that have bigger portfolios of work. Some of you may be wanting to get into it. You know, I've never built something and I want to start doing stuff for theme parks, or, you know, design my own product, or for clients, or launch my own Etsy store. Well, oftentimes you kind of need a portfolio. It's very tough to get hired where it's like, trust me, I can do it. You don't need to see anything. I could do it. Yeah. References? Ask my cat and my dog. They love me. So Craig Dickerson is here. Hey, people. Hey, Craig. Thanks for joining. We are in the, you know, in the throes of planning out our project that we're going to be working on for the next few weeks here. And I am thinking that we are done with the ask. I think we have a good idea of what features we want our project to have. I think the features are somewhat realistic for what we're trying to accomplish with our prototype. We also have our scope, you know, which is part of our scope, understanding, you know, how much movement we want, how elaborate we want the movement to be. Spider legs can have many servos. You know, a lot of animatronics can have 50, 100, over 100 servos. But for something that is a Halloween haunt, say you want to sell at a Spirit Halloween shop or something, that's kind of overkill, you know, for something that someone's going to use once a year. So we want to kind of minimize our servoage, you know, servo usage. So let's move on to the imagine of the steps, which is like the most fun. This is where you guys start firing up that chat with your ideas. I'm going to move on to the computer and I'm going to take my papers and stuff so we can continue taking notes. And I'll take a piece of balsa wood with me here. We'll go over also the best prototyping material to use if you've never, you know, done this before. So the objective is, you know, to take, especially those of you that have never really prototyped or built a mech, what process, you know, I use, which is sometimes very loosey-goosey, I admit, loosey-goosey, and then other times it's more, you know, calculated. It's failing with purpose, right? And we're doing productive failing here. So I'm gonna meet you over at the computer. All right. All right, let me find you guys. Let me find you. There we go. All right, somebody. Now Craig Dickerson is like, rewind, start over. So yeah, we're gonna, again. And we're gonna rewind. And I'm back. All right. All right. So I think now we fixed both mics. We got that one, and now we got this one. So there's no other mics that I know of. All right, so Rich is saying better. There it is. Everyone is confirming up. So with the imagine step, you can see that I like to break it up into two main kind of chunks, the research chunk and the brainstorming chunk. Now, I'm not gonna lie, like I used to skip all this and I would just start building, because research, like, honestly, the last thing I wanted to do when I started building is just like repeat something somebody has already done, so why am I gonna like look up what somebody's already done? I want to come up with something unique, that is me, that's like my own spin on something. And I just found that like you'll get there. It's just going to take a lot longer. And sometimes you think like, oh, it's so unique, and you look it up and it turns out that somebody's done it, not only just done it, but done it better. And had you kind of seen it, oftentimes the best part of looking at existing products is, or, existing competitors, is that you always immediately see a way of doing it better. And you're like, wow, and you can put your own personal spin on it, but they've done a lot of the heavy lifting. So you can look at how popular something is, how well done, how you can do either a better quality, a look, feel, better feature. So I started to do this research a lot more, and I found that you make, like with failing, you make bigger leaps that way, and the solutions you put together at the end have a higher probability of working. So that's huge. So in looking at existing products, the first thing I did, and let me switch screens here. There we go. So the first thing I did was look at animatronic spiders, and it also, we defined our requirements. We're like, yeah, we want to have like light up eyes, the sound, the movement. Well, in doing our research, we might find something cooler. And we're like, you know what, let's just bag one of those and let's do this, because now when you combine that with all the other stuff we've charted out, might be even cooler. So in looking at a lot of the animatronic spiders, and now is a great time, to be looking at this stuff. one of the things I noticed that the most popular advanced feature of these spiders is kind of like this jumping action over here. So right over here, this little guy jumping here, and these are all, here's a Spirit Halloween one here, and he jumps. Some of these guys have videos, but this one appears to have like a foot pad, you know, kind of like a foot activation thing. So that's kind of neat because you can put a carpet or something, right? And we can have like a foot activated thing, and they step on the carpet and, you know, it activates, you know, so that's an idea. Although at that point, we don't know if we want him like either jumping or if we want him like scurrying about. So, you know, that's something we kind of didn't think about. All right, looking at existing products here. One of the things I noticed is that jumping crate spider. Okay, from the horror dome. Ooh, let's see here. So I'm gonna play this without audio so YouTube doesn't get mad at me. So let's see what we got going on here. All right. But see, he's got the wiggly legs with the wires, you know, but the jumping action, I imagine, is pneumatic, and he jumps. So to me, there's quite a few jumping spiders. I think, so maybe doing another jumping spider. I kind of like our features better, which is like the web shooting, a spider that actually moves. All of these, although it jumps and you know, it's still pretty stationary. So I think it would be very different to have something that moves around. And my first experience with this was a Chucky doll. I don't know if I can even find it. So I think it was Spirit Halloween it's this guy right here, this Chucky doll. It's motion activated, and he's on that rolling base, and he actually comes at you with the knife. And I thought that was so clever versus the ones that just kind of like sit there. So I ended up getting him last year. And if you go, my tip, you know, for a lot of this stuff, if you like Halloween, is to go like the first or second week of October. They start to blow stuff out. Or certain stores have a super special the day after Halloween. Of course, you know, you can't use it for the holiday, but you get it really, you know, on blowout. So here is this Home Depot one right here. So for me, I checked Lowe's, I checked Home Depot, I checked Amazon. You know, because again, we're doing kind of like an abridged version of all this, kind of going through the steps. But let's see, here's an animated spider, and you can already tell from the price, it probably doesn't animate a whole lot. You know, usually a really well put together animated will be over $100. So here's a battery operated one. It's got a video. It's a cobweb. All right, so this one sprouts up. So instead of at you, it sprouts up. All right, so all pneumatics and things. And you can see the legs are all just like the wiggly. So I think if I were to design a product, I think that's where the opportunity is something that I don't really see in our brief research that we've done out on the market. So, Craig is asking, how is your puppy doing? Chewing up stuff, maybe? Luckily, she is past that age. She's like, doesn't interest me anymore, you know, so she's got plenty of toys, and luckily her attention stays on the toys and not the furniture. So Dave is saying this spider needs a screeching sound. I think so. Pneumatic jumpers like Speed Racer. Yeah, I mean, that spider was really jumping. I think too, sound is really great. I think these spiders have very basic sound effects, like, and it's the same sound effect. So maybe we can come up with something that's a little bit more cool, you know, maybe a little bit more unique. The eyes can always use improvement, like these LED cheapy looking eyes, but for very personal reasons. Like, nothing says Halloween like just some LED eyeballs, you know? Like, let's just not get so fancy with the LED eyeballs. That's kind of like an iconic Halloween decor thing. You gotta have like the cheesy. Our step up is that we're making them flickering, you know, LEDs. Woo, you know, we're gonna like really step it up. But yeah, I do love the very, you know, cheesy looking LED eyeballs. So looking at these products, a lot of them seem kind of similar. Here you can see a pneumatic, thing going on here. So, this is probably another jumping spider. I myself have also looked at a lot of these. And here's one that I think the legs move back and forth very slowly. So this is a Lowe's. Let's see what we got going on here with this Lowe's. It's animated. Is there a video? How could it not have a video? All right. Oh, it lights up. That's kind of nice with all the lights and stuff. So this is more of like I guess a decor element. Maybe the lights light up. Sometimes just by having lights that light up, they call it, animated. Well, I guess it is. I'll give them that. All right. So one of the things we're already seeing is that a moving spider that actually wholeheartedly, like the entire object moves, is kind of non-existent. Leg movement is kind of not there as well. So those are two key things that we can take advantage of. The eyes, the sound we can improve on a little bit. And Dave is saying, I noticed a lot of spiders only have 2 LED eyes. That's true too. And Craig is saying, do you still have the Frankenstein mansion? Heck, I do. I so do. That thing is like so cool. And we are going to build upon that. We're going to make it an entire weather station here after this project. And Craig is saying controllable movements is a must. That would be so cool. I think so too. I think we need to get ours moving with the understanding that when you're making something for a store, kids are going to be handling it. I can totally see why a lot of these mass-produced Halloween decors are very simple in terms of animatronics. They get dropped, they get stuffed into a box till next year. Like, I really fold mine up. I'm real careful about how I put my animatronic ones away, and therefore they last a long, long time. So I can see that to build something, not all products are this way. So if you're building a high-end handbag or a high-end app or piece of electronics, the price point is going to attract that buyer that wants, if you buy a laptop and, laptops are expensive, you're going to be a little more careful with that. That's not like you're going to shove it in a storage bin or anything like that. But for a piece of decor, we want it to be more robust. But because the spin here is that we are doing this for personal learning, we want to see how cool we can make these mechanics. Also, if you are building for a haunted house where the spook or the haunt is going to be in a locale where people aren't going to be touching it or pulling on it or anything like that, you want to build something that's got more movement, that's got more realism, like when you're going through a ride in an amusement park. All those are kind of things that kind of accentuate the ride, but you can't really touch them. So those are great opportunities to make them more complex. So we're going to kind of take that, that route, since I know I'm not going to be mass producing this and people are going to be stuffing them in boxes. So I agree with all that. And back to Dave's comment about a lot of spiders only have 2 LED eyes. Yeah, and we did this with our previous spider. We prepped up way more. So we're going to have at least 6 eyes. If we could fit 8, that'd be great. But because we're scaling down, it's a lot of eyes to fit in there. But it's going to be a feat, because even these most gigantic spiders up in here have 2 eyes. Like, look at this guy. He could have had like all eyes going all back up in here and stuff like that. And no, just 2 eyes. So yeah, we're definitely going to have to do more than 2 eyes. That should be under the requirements, on the list. We got to add that under requirements. All right. So, and even after this stream, if you guys are like, oh, I totally forgot I came up with this cool idea, you know what? Add it, because we're going to start building next week. So going back, where are we in all this? Oh, patents. Okay. So yeah, we got to talk about this real quick, especially for those of you that are wanting to sell something. The last thing you want to do is build something that too closely matches a patent, and then, listen, you could try and get away with it, but like, you're taking a chance there. And if you get caught, the repercussions are worse. I say just like nip it in the bud right now, and make sure that the product you're creating doesn't infringe on something that's already existent. So you can either go to the official government patent search. I like Google Patents. I think the search engine on it is a little bit better, a little more like just user friendly, and it pulls up things a little bit easier to read, So let's see here. Animated spider. See if anyone's A method for converting PowerPoint presentations. Yeah, that is exactly what we were looking for. And you're going to notice with patents, sometimes you have to use really technical words to get it to like maybe robot spider leg. Oh. All right, spider leg structure foot. All right, so this one's going to be in what looks like Chinese. I imagine CN here is maybe China's or Cantonese. Yeah, I don't know. So let's open this kind of in a new tab here. So oftentimes, especially with the US patents, you'll get kind of a quick summary of what it is. Pictures appear down here. It is blank. It's got no pictures. And the nice thing is that it goes into a ridiculous amount of detail such that you can recreate it. So one great way to learn is actually doing, patent searches, seeing how these things are built, and then reading like all the fasteners. They really go through things. So just kind of going through here, you can see this patent kind of spider legs. For our project, way too complex. Like there's no way we're going to build this within our constraints, which is time and probably budget. We're trying to do these things without a 3D printer, although you can, I guess, technically cut pieces of wood, but this is going to take you forever. So here's like another blown up picture. And if you read the Chinese, they actually tell you what each numbered thing does, and it might have it on the English version, but it's even got blow-ups of all the parts. So searching patents is a really great way to learn, but I'm going to tell you, it's like a rabbit hole. You start like looking for things. Remember our butt kicking machine? I found this like weird patent that like kicks your butt, and I thought it was hilarious. We ended up building our own because it was just, I'm like, I gotta recreate this. Oh, and I've already committed the wrongness here. So check out this step right here. There I go again, because this is kind of what I start doing. Stay focused on the topic. It's under brainstorm, and it's all the way at the bottom, but I can't resist. Like patents to me are just a rabbit hole. When you start going down the rabbit hole, it's like, what the heck? People invent the funkiest thing. So where were we? Let's do spider appendage. And it's great to have a thesaurus. So if you put in the word for leg, start trying like spider, all the different thesaurus ones, and you'll get different things. I find that the more technical the word, the better. So I think there were a couple more under, what did I call it? Like robot spider leg, something like that. A gesture interface robot, that's kind of neat. Oh wow, predator control using robot and sensory, that's kind of neat too. I'm tempted to click it, but I'm staying on topic, Oh, and it would help if I spelled robot right, maybe. Maybe it's very. So we got the spider leg structure. Mobile robot platform. That could be neat. And there might be something kind of interesting in here. That's pretty neat. It's almost like a Lost in Space, type of thing there. Little guy. So that's not really what we're looking for. So there doesn't seem to be a ton. And I highly advise, say you are really serious about putting together a product. As you can see, using the specific words can be a little bit tricky. So it is kind of worth it hiring a patent lawyer that knows how to look through this stuff, can make sure that the design you come up with isn't infringing on anybody's business, going on here. So Louis is here. Hey, Louis. Welcome to our stream. We are brainstorming on how we are going to build our animatronic spider robot here. So definitely, chime in your ideas. So Dave is saying 47.5 servos in that Asian spider. I think so. And that's what we're trying to stay away from, like 47 servos per leg. That is per leg. you know? So there's a couple, so we can keep going, and the more different words and more technical words you use, you'll be able to find, you know, more patents and look this up. You know, again, we're doing kind of like, you know, an abbreviated version. So another one of our features was the web shooter, you know, so has someone come up with some kind of like web shooter? Not really. Maybe web shooter is too familiar. Maybe like wrist shooter. Some of these are kind of neat. This might be neat because one of the things we have to think about is how we're going to reload the spider. So here is kind of this guy, you know, something that this guy came up with. And again, everything is like super numbered. So you can go here in the main section and read it down, and they'll describe what every little piece does. Now, whether or not, you know, you're going to infringe, another thing you want to look for is if you find something where you're like, darn, I was going to use that, you know, and somebody already patented it. Just because that there's a listing for it doesn't mean that it's active. So one of the things you want to go down here and make sure I'm not covering it, but this status here, abandoned. So this person filed but never finished. So that means it's free for grabs. So in order to patent an idea, you have to pay a fee. It's not cheap, you know, so a lot of people start, and just because you pay the fee does not guarantee that you're going to get that patent. So sometimes it's like money out the window. So people will start the process, and you'll find that a lot of people abandon it, you know. After you've successfully patented too, there are maintenance fees that you have to pay every few years. And I forget like what the intervals are. And so you'll find that some of them say either expired or the fact that they didn't pay the maintenance fee, so it goes back out again. After 20 years, a patent will go into public domain, so you'll see that it's either inactive or expired, and those you can use. So if you see the word live or active, those are the ones that you know that if you were to like blatantly rip them off, you'll probably get in trouble. And people, you know, if you paid hundreds of dollars, if not more, if you hired a lawyer to do this right, all of the drawings you have to put together, the writing, heck, I would be patrolling, making sure someone else is not using it. I put in a lot of work and money, so I get that. So wrist projectile. All right. So I usually like to go for the pictures first, and this one is from Russia. It doesn't say anything about the status, but here's a couple pictures. So this is a gas cartridge. I think this will be tough for us to do because you gotta hide it, you know. So unless we do a spider that doesn't move, it's gonna have to carry this toy launcher and system therefore. All right, that might be kind of what we're looking for. All right, look, maybe we can adapt something. Oh, look, status, abandoned people. It's been abandoned. So here clearly is this guy's. Let me see if I can scroll this image down or pop it into a big screen. There we go. So we can see that he's got what appears to be like extras, you know, like little spare rounds there. And there's something in his hand with this tube. Now this to me looks like it may be an air tube, and maybe this is a pneumatic. Now we've done projects where we use syringes and you pump the syringe real quick, it sends air and it can move something. I'm thinking a tube that small, we would need a big syringe to send enough air to actually project out something with a piece of string, meeting wind resistance. But, you know, here is an idea of one way to do it. It's kind of like this guy's own homegrown little Spider-Man wrist thing, but it gives us an idea. This is small. It fits on your wrist. So definitely something that we can hide in a small spider. So literally, I kid you not, guys, we can spend like all day on patents and looking at funny things. You know, there's alarm clocks that will smack you in the face, and some YouTubers have built that as well. So all kinds of like funny and very like medieval looking things on here. So it's easy to get sucked down the rabbit hole. And Dave is saying maybe a net shooter, and Rich is saying you could easily use silly string as a web shooter. We'll come back to that. We actually did that last year, and we're going to have a whole conversation of how that worked. But yes, that is a really great idea. A mesh launcher of some sort, remote control spider. I'm thinking definitely remote control for moving around the base, maybe for some of the features as well, or it can be motion activated. I'll put remind me if I forget to talk in a little bit more detail about the wrist shooter. Actually, we can go through some of, since I'm here, it's easier to, we'll call it like silly string. And I'll grab a can of silly string because I got it like right here, and I'll show you guys kind of like what we went through. Oh, we don't want it to search in the patent. I am not typing today. All right, so we have our various silly strings. And for our first spider, we took a can of silly string. And in order to get it to be compact, I decided we're gonna lay this thing flat, almost like the Spider-Man wrist shooter, right? And we even modified the cap, and we did that by plugging up this hole right here, drilling another hole up top so it comes out the top. So it's perfect, right? It's going to sit like this. One of the things, and we tied a string and guided the string down the side of the can with these straws right here, right? And there was a servo sitting in a wooden contraption, but in all intents and purposes, it was sitting down here. The servo would pull the string, thus depressing, that's the wrong one, but thus depressing we had to get a stronger servo, but depressed the thing, and then the silly string would come out. Perfect, right? The problem we had is that your average can will only spray to about the halfway point when it's laying this way, and then you waste the rest of the product. It won't come out. So there's something about the Spider-Man web shooter that the can is more designed to shoot sideways. And even then, in the instructions, it tells you to kind of like aim your wrist up and not be totally horizontal. So also the cans of silly string that come with the Spider-Man thing are much smaller. So parents complain that they run out in 2 seconds, and then it's like a hassle to find it, and it's much more expensive, those cans, than our regular silly string. You can sometimes find these at the dollar store, which is great, but the cans are much, much smaller. So the silly string is one way to do it. The other kind of thing that I found with the silly string is the mess it makes in the yard. Most people loved it, but there were like a handful of people that wanted some fair warning or were scared that the silly string was going to stain their clothes. This particular silly string came out pretty well. When it gets to about this point, for whatever reason, I think it just needs to be shaken from time to time. It gets more wet down here, and so some people, like the way I remove silly string, you just kind of pull it up off your clothes, like that. Some people were taking their hands and smearing it off, thus pushing the silly string into their clothes. So I can see how some of them weren't too enthused. But that was the silly string, I would say, prototype test. Probably the silly string component, the silly string launcher, it was motion activated, and it worked really reliably. So we got that. We even took it, and instead of having it this way, we took our silly string can and built a totally different device to get it to shoot upright and hit it the best we could. I tried to hide it under the fangs, of the spider, and have it shoot in between. So it's definitely a thing to do. It's a little bit big, and I think the only way we would be able to do the silly string is if we did some kind of Spider-Man, situation, and find those cans and work with those cans. So I'll definitely put that one on our list. So yes, so for brainstorming, and sometimes I like to do this. I know I have it as two big different chunks, but do it as we do it. So for movement, some of you guys had the idea. I think it was San Juan. So option one, and again, during the, while we brainstorm, I don't think we spent too much time looking on this, but we definitely want to pick quantity over quality. And so encouraging the wild, silly, even if like one of you guys have like a crazy idea, just like throw it out there, because you never know that we can't take a kernel of it and like, or it gets somebody to think of another idea, especially when you're brainstorming in teams. Number two under brainstorming is the criticism. I do this to myself all the time. So not only others, but like your own self, don't think you have a bad idea. It's going to be a fun idea. I'm trying to write down all of our ideas as much as possible. And then we can combine and then build upon each other's ideas. And don't do what I do, which is always stray off and start looking at butt kicking machines and like, oh, this is cool. And, how to build flying saucers and things like that. So yeah, I'm trying to stay on the spiders. So we search the patents, standards and codes. I'll throw up some links for you guys in the community. If you are building a product to sell, it's kind of no-brainer stuff. Like you don't want to use plastics that are toxic. You don't want to use paints that are toxic, and so there are different standards and codes for fasteners that you use. You don't want to use something so obscure that it can't be manufactured or you can't find replacement parts for. If it's something for a building, if you're making, designing a new kind of, eco-friendly building or something like that, different cities have different codes. And so it's just looking those things up. We're making Halloween and haunt props here, so this shouldn't affect too much. It's not going to be sold to the public. Reverse engineer, and I like how my engineer has 3 R's. Reverse engineer. Typing this up really quick here, but another way I started was to purchase Halloween animatronic props on sale, either really close to Halloween or right after, and just buying it up. Another great source are thrift stores. Thrift stores are looking to get rid of their holiday decorations because it just sits there and like collects dust. So they'll be willing to like blow that stuff out. And if you get friendly with your thrift store, I always kind of give them a list of stuff that I'm looking for. So that way, when it comes in, heck, give me a call. I'm interested. I'll buy it right away. That way it's good for them. It doesn't sit on their shelf, because trust me, ain't no shortage of junk coming into the thrift store, right? They want to keep pushing out, some people's junk being other people's gold. It tends to be my gold a lot of the time. So yes, bring your junk. I will value it as gold. So because you pay so cheap for them, it's a great opportunity to start taking them apart. And one of the first motors that I learned to use was a Deere motor. A Deere motor, we're not really covering them here because it's very simple. It's a motor that goes one speed. And so the movements it provides, it's very repetitive. So for instance, if you have, there we go, that's better. Like a deer head going up and down during Christmas, hence the name Deer motor, because that's what people associated with. So if you have background elements of a haunted house, say, that it's okay that the movements are just kind of repetitive. It can be a skeleton lifting and closing a coffin, or peering from a tombstone, like that. Deer motors are great for that. Super easy to wire because they usually come with a plug. You plug it into the wall. So not so great for things that need movement and need to move from place to place. So, we're not really going to cover Deere motors because we've already worked with servos and other DC motors, but definitely something to look at. Super cheap for repetitive style movements. So what else we doing here? So where were we with our situation? So that was reverse engineering. The other one is user interviews. So if you are coming up with a new app, or whatever new product. Sometimes before you start, I want to make a cool pair of overalls for people that work in the shop. Talk to people who run their businesses out of their workshops, out of their garages. Sometimes you'll get an idea that you're not thinking of before you even start. Sometimes user interviews can be done after, after we debut this spider. I can interview the kids. What did they think about it? What did the parents think about it? And we can use that to make improvements. So you can gather your interviews, either before or after, and it, just depends on the, whatever it is you're building. So I think we've done most of this. We've done wrist. We can look up to see if there's any type of wrist shooter products. I found one that I think may work for us. Let's look at the silly string ones, and let's look at because the silly string worked really well for us. It just had a couple of snafus that we might be able to figure out. So silly string web shooter. I think here's the Spider-Man one. So here's one on Amazon. Minus the glove. So let's see here what we got going on. So we have our can here. It's a little big, but we can always upsize our base and be able to fit this underneath the base. And it comes maybe with hopefully an extra can here. So we can definitely go the Spider-Man web shooter route, and where he is depressing, we can maybe get a servo to press down on it, or a string that pulls it down via a servo. So there's ways for us to, to get around that one. So that's, we can go back to that idea, and I guess on a kid's wrist there, that gives us an idea of size, how size this is. And this is about $36. So we have to add that. If we go this route, we got to add that to our budget. Now, of course, we can 3D print something like this very similar. We can just buy the cans, maybe we can just buy the refills and instead use much of our technique that we built, which worked. It worked really well. No need to redesign something that worked really well. We had our string guidance right here. And really what we're missing is the cans. So one thing we can do, which I'll, put on our list, is see if we have, let's see, the web shooter. I'll call it Spider-Man refill cans. That way I'll know what it is. And let's see, the other thing, I'm just going to put web shooter, see what happens. And Louis has a good idea. Can I suggest notes? Yes, that way you guys can see what I'm writing. I will fire that up for you here in a moment. And so here's a couple others where they don't shoot silly string. They actually shoot just string. And there's one, and of course you have your numerous YouTubers. I sit and I watch these videos all the time because it does give you ideas, and you can say, hey, I can take this and improve it. And someone's already figured out a mechanism for shooting it. We can definitely, most of these operate via spring-loaded shooters. And once it goes out, then you have to load in another one, or you have to take the one that's shot, rewind it, and load it. Some of them have spools that the user will manually reload, but there's no reason why we can't attach it to a DC motor and just have it re-spool it for us, and reshoot. So those are a couple ideas there. And if I go here, I think one of the ones that I thought was kind of interesting, and these are all about the same price, but you can see this one has kind of like a spinny wheel that allows you to spin it back. Some of them are more expensive than others, but these all kind of give us ideas on potential things we can do. Oh, I think the one I was looking at was right down here. So you can see this red kind of spinny wheel thing right there. So the user just kind of puts his finger, and you can totally tell this is like a very simply 3D printed type of object. We're going to try and do ours very lo-fi without having to 3D print. So we can see here, let's see what the dealio is with this. So, okay, string activated stuff is always easy to do with a servo. You got a spring, looks like magnets on the end. Oh, and that allows the kid to, you know, grab something lightweight. And at some point, I think the spring and the magnet are probably not, I should say, hard enough to like hurt anybody, because you're also going to be shooting towards their feet, and there he is winding it. So, I mean, that's an idea, you know, of kind of reloading and rewinding. So those are kind of the two main ideas that I was thinking of. And let me see here if I can bring up the notepad. All right. There we go. And I am going to try and add this. So if you bear with me here, I'm going to, let's see if I can grab this notepad. All right, I'm just gonna put it here. So some of the ideas we had was for our web shooter, and let's see if I can make this like way bigger. Font size of 10? Are you kidding me? You guys are seeing a black screen right now. I am just like messing with the font here. I'm going to make it a font of, there we go. So for our web shooter here, and that might be a little bit too big. And you guys will see the black screen of death there for just a second. There we go. So web shooter. So idea one was to do the silly string. I'll call it the horizontal silly string shooter. Spider-Man style. And then number two was our string web shooter. And then for our movement, and I'm talking like overall movement, we have our RC car idea. And then San Juan kind of got me thinking of this, which is like, I'll call it like a cable system between two trees, between two trees, where maybe our spider just kind of like goes back and forth, but then you have to have like either two trees or put two stakes where you want it to go. I don't happen to have two trees, but heck, like we said, put in all ideas. So Merlin is saying, yeah, bring on Halloween. It's great to have you back. I am here. So great idea with the notes, Louie. Thanks for that. So for the web shooter, I think we have our two ideas. The movement, leg movement. I have an idea for this. So the leg movement, I'm going to put it on here. It's falls to me under kind of like the wild and silly, but doing like I'll call it like a robotic leg with the 40-some servos. I mean, I'm sure we can do something, you know, a little bit simpler, but to get it done in the time frame, I think that's going to be a little bit difficult. I'm going to put here the articulated hand, just for me to remember. And let me shrink this down here. Let me hide this here for a sec for you guys and show you kind of what I mean. So let me see if I can find this. What would I call it? DIY. I've built one of these before. No, articulated hand. And we'll go under the images. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is that, I mean, spider legs are kind of hands, and I'm trying to find a way that is still simple for us to be able to articulate some legs. And especially if we don't go with the robotic leg, is something that is lightweight, simple to move. And one of the ideas I remembered was I built one of these for a Hellboy right hand of doom. You know, a lot of times it is a glove you put on. Sometimes it's a fist-shaped glove. Sometimes it's a glove with fingers. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the fingers could actually move? So I built an articulated hand system very simply with nylon tubing where I cut notches where each of the bend happens, so there's only material at the top, so a piece of string is able to pull, and because it's nylon, it just wants to pop right back into place, so we don't need any kind of return spring mechanism. So it can be done with PVC pipe. You know, I did it with a nylon. Some people do it with metal, copper, or, you know, just a steel hollow. And so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. With the PVC piping, you have to have a string system on the bottom and on the top, you know, one to curl and one to flex. The nice thing with the nylon is that it kind of self-bounces. So I would you can find them thinner. So I probably would go with a material like that. You can also do it with party straws using the exact same method where you cut a notch at the bottom where you want the bends to make, and that straw is going to want to spring back into place, you know, every time you pull the string. The material is lightweight, so I think something like a small servo would be ideal. We can even put a couple legs on the same servo, so maybe you get two movements, so you don't need 8 servos. Maybe we can have one servo control 2 legs, maybe one from each side. Anytime the servo moves this way, this leg goes. When the servo then moves that way, then, you know, this leg goes, or, you know, we can figure it out. So this is another way, and I'll just put like nylon tubing here in our notes. Let me make them visible for you guys. So I remember from a different prototype that this worked. So this is kind of like, we know that something like this would most likely work, you know, versus the robotic legs. This probably has a little bit more room for error. But again, this is like the brainstorming. We're tossing everything, you know, in the kitchen sink. So Merlin is saying you can set up circular cables like a flying ghost. So I think what Merlin means, and you can clarify, Merlin, do you mean to put the spider kind of like up near a tree or something and put a circular cable and have it spin the spider up above your head? Or are you talking about leg movement, something circular with the leg movement? I think what you mean is putting the spider above your head, kind of like what San Juan was saying, where he wanted to, you know, had the idea of it coming down, the spider web coming down. So David's saying kitchen sink. So I'm thinking Merlin is thinking along the same line where the spider is up above in a tree and he can spin around and his legs can be going. I think aiming silly string at people would be a little bit tough in that manner, but we can put that under movement. So we can do the, and that's what I think you mean. So if I'm totally off base, definitely clarify in the comments. So let's see what you said. Spider would move in a circle. Okay, so I'm gonna call it circular movement in the trees. In a tree, you know, probably wouldn't be multiple trees. So we can do that. All right, so we have a couple ideas going on here that I think some I think are easier to build than others. I think this one is the easiest. This one's actually structurally the easiest, the silly string shooter. The tough part of it is hiding it. Because it's kind of big. And then this we can really compact down. They both have pros and cons. I think the RC car for movement in terms of moving the entire thing, although no, these probably wouldn't be that difficult to do either. And I'm going to put 4. which is San Juan's idea. This one, I have the spider moving from tree to tree or from post to post. San Juan was saying to have a suspended spider that moves up and down. So we got some good ideas for the movement, like what we're going to do with the movement there. Sound and eyes, I believe, are relatively easy. We are going to add more eyes than your average spider has. We talked about how lame that no matter how big the spider, it only has like the 2 eyes. So we're going to do more eyes. And the sound effects, you know, we're just maybe come up with some cooler sound effects. So we're going to have light up, moving legs, web shooter, and some kind of movement, whether on an RC car or on a cable system suspended above our head. So one of those is gonna happen. All right, guys. So you can keep your ideas coming, you know, and I'm gonna like transfer, you know, all this and kind of jot this down in the community so we can, you know, keep churning it as we build. And we're gonna like finalize all of our plans, you know, as we build each individual component. So I'm going to check our list, make sure we like checked everything off through the Imagine. We looked at existing products. Again, we did all this in a very accelerated, you know, method, especially if you're building a product. You want to take a lot more time with something like this. We looked at a couple fun patents, standards and codes. I'm going to pop up two. I can actually just kind of show you guys real quick. Pop this up over here. And I'm just loading them up, and then I'll switch screens and kind of show you guys what I did here. And regulations. I think these sites are relatively, they're easy and hard to use. You just have to get used to how to search for things and the way things are documented. Once you kind of get over that, it's not too bad. So, and especially if you are looking at this type of stuff for the first time, if you're regularly working with, you know, these types of things for your work, or it might be a little bit easier. But here is the website here, the standards website. So you can look for public, government, industry. The easiest thing to do is just to search things here. So you can search for, you know, fasteners and see. So it's got fasteners and metals. I usually go to publications, you know, right away. And you can read about the various acts, you know, quality acts that you have to follow. So, you know, certainly you don't want to use a fastener that is not going to handle the tension or, you know, the shear of what you're trying to bolt together. So you can, you know, that's your standards there. And then regulations.gov. So you can look at various regulations on different things. So again, there's always professional help that can help you with this sort of thing. That way, I know it's kind of tough to say I'm going to spend money up front and I don't even know if this product is going to work, but it costs even more money to go through your entire product and then find out that there is something wrong with it that will not pass, you know, inspection or infringing on someone's copyright. You know, that gets way more expensive. So it all, you know, depends on what you're building, why you're building it, you know, how far you have to go down these standards. In our purpose, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, you know, far too much, nor do we have to go down the patent rabbit hole too much. So, yeah, pretty lucky and good first project here. All right, so we have a couple of ideas going, and let me see. David is saying E for the software standards. Oh, IEE for the software standards. Okay, yeah, like RFCs, exactly. So I pulled up a couple material ones since this is like lo-fi, but yes, if you are building something in the software realm, there's all kinds of different standards there. So I'm gonna grab that, and I'm just going to put it down here just to remind myself. That way, when I put the government and all the links in the community, I'll include this one as well. So if anyone is building software for the first time and they're unsure of like where to look for this stuff. So great addition there, Dave, and Merlin, Louis, Craig, San Juan, Rich. Hopefully I'm not missing anyone. You guys all gave some really cool ideas. So now that we completed the imagine aspect, we picked quantity over quality. You know, we just kind of threw in everything we thought of. We discussed pros and cons, but none of them are bad ideas. We encourage the wild and silly, like my robot legs. Okay, I think I recorded all of our ideas. I think I grabbed it all and combine and build on the ideas. So yeah, I think we can borrow a little bit from the silly string and the regular web string. I foresee there being some kind of like combination going on there. And thanks to your guys' help, we stayed on topic because we would be looking at all kinds of like funky, funny things by now if we didn't. So I will meet you back at the table and what is the next step here? I think it's like planning this whole thing. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about materials and planning for the next time. Oh yes, and Dave reminded me Kurt and Craig from earlier on. So yes, thanks for your participation and your ideas as well. So I think I got most of y'all. All right. So and Louis is saying interesting to say patent. Yes, patent. All right. So I'm going to meet you guys over at the table. I'm not there. Where I be at? All right. All right, I'm here. All right, so notepad was a good idea, but me, you know, since we're lo-fi, I was like going lo-fi all the way. Pencil and paper, people. Lo-fi all the way. So now in order to plan this whole thing, so this is where like just, you know, coming up with a plan versus just kind of like tinkering till you get it right. This is where it really makes a difference in that we're going to take the project, which we kind of have been doing all along, and break it down to its basic elements. So we talked about the leg mechanism, you know, different ways of making that happen. Some kind of web shooter, you know, maybe it's concealed and it pops up or something, or maybe it's there the whole time, but it's still kind of concealed with some decor. Some kind of Bluetooth motorized base. It may be Bluetooth, it may not be. If we do the suspension in the trees idea, it might be something that just comes up and down. Maybe it's motion activated where we don't need Bluetooth. And some LED eyes and sound effects. We can't, it's Halloween. Like it just, if everything else fails, this thing will sit out there stationary, just with some blinky eyes and some sound effects. So that's definitely gonna happen. And then one of the things that probably the toughest thing is, okay, so we get all these individual things to work. We have to make sure that they work together. Can you imagine the servos bumping into each other, the strings pulling the different legs, all getting like crisscross and stuff like that, and how they work with each other. So, you know, there's some planning we can do here. And in our analysis, we can start taking all the ideas that we generated, which I'll put up, and really start seeing which are the ones that fulfill our requirements the most in terms of the time limit, in terms of budget, or, you know, what we're trying to accomplish. And so our requirements, we're trying to get four things working. The constraints is time, obviously. Probably our biggest over budget is really the time. So whichever ones kind of fit all that are probably the ones we're going to go with. Now, materials. So this is a question like I get a lot. Like, I want to start this stuff, but I don't have a 3D printer. I don't have a CNC machine. I don't know how to use Fusion 360. None of that is necessary. So this, I try to like just come up and document all of the things that I've used in the past, all the things that I use the most commonly. So for wood, I've used like plywood and things in the past, but balsa wood is way cheaper. You know, so if you can use balsa wood, it comes in 1/16 inch or an 1/8 of an inch. I prefer to go with the 1/8 of an inch. It's a little thicker, a little more sturdy. The wooden dowels, you can get this square or you can get it round. The foam core board is great. Go to the dollar store, people. Foam core board is $1 each. It's a great alternative to wood for lightweight things, just to test stuff out. Poster board and cardstock, especially, and I know this list really looks like we in like middle school, like come on, like straws and stuff, come on. I'm telling you guys, you know, and it's best to make mistakes with this cheap stuff than it is, you know, than to metal work and start cutting wood and making all these elaborate pieces. And it works, you know, the function is much the same. So foam core board is something that I use a lot. Poster board, get it all at your dollar store, you know. Where were we? Craft knives, of course, rulers and measuring tape. I like to have a cutting surface. I have damaged way too many, you know, tables. You get into it, people, sometimes, right? Hot glue gun or super glue. One of the things to remember is you want to try and avoid doing things that are too permanent, because trust me, you are going to change your mind. You're going to have to take a panel and move it. So if you have wood glued it together, or I know I have super glue, but it's got its purposes in prototyping. I try and use hot glue as much as I can, because you can take it apart with just a little bit of heat gun action, you know? So Dave is already saying, I got that. I got all that. I got all that stuff. Straws, both the regular straws, the bendy straws, and I like the big old thick cocktail straws, you know, because for adult beverages, you don't want to use the little tiny straws. If you're going to do adult beverage, you get the big straw, the giant straw. All right. And they're also stronger, great for making articulated thinkers and things. Aluminum foil is great for making basic shapes of things. You know, like you could make your skull head out of aluminum. Paper towel tubes, I use these a lot anytime I need spacers. You can cut those, modeling clay, styrofoam, which I have here, or that pink foam insulation if you need to just kind of mock up a shape, or mock up like, you know, like we will be doing for our spider head. Rubber bands for any type of actuators. Plastic grocery bags, I love to use this for making shapes. We don't need this head right here. We don't need our skeleton head. We can take a grocery bag, fill it up with paper in the basic shape of this head, and another one in the basic shape of our spider body, and you're good to go, just like they did with, you know, Aliens and Sigourney Weaver. So you can definitely do that. I went a little bit more all out, you know, with stuff. It is Halloween, so let's see. Tape, of course, all kinds of tape, duct tape and masking tape. There's something that's not on this list. It's really important. So like the stream is like screwed up. It's like there's no point in going on. There really isn't. The stream has been ruined by me forgetting this. So we'll continue, but then I'm going to burn this footage, and I'm going to burn. You need to burn all witnesses. All the equipment's got to go. Everything's got to go. So what did I forget? What goes with duct tape, people? And it's not on the list. Zip ties. Zip ties. It's like the twins on The Shining. Like they work together in an evil way, but in a wonderfully evil way. So you can't have one and not the other, people. So yes, big mistake. I do not have zip ties on this list. And you can see the various other things. You know, I'll put this up as well, and we can add to it. You know, if you guys have worked with something that you're like, oh, you have to add this to the list. It's really cheap, easy to work with. Towards the bottom there, you see that I don't include soldering irons or anything like that. Alligator clips, breadboards, some of the electronics, hand tools, handsaw, you know, heat gun, that kind of thing. You know, pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, we try not to do anything too permanent, because it's probably going to change. But if you were building a more final version of your prototype, like a more hi-fi, you know, prototype, then yeah, this is something that the hi-fi prototypes are great for, say, a client. If you put together something with like popsicle sticks and the such, people that are used to looking at prototypes will get it, and they'll say, okay, this is the movement I want. You nailed this. You know, you need to work on that. But a client that's buying something for their corporate event or their amusement park may not be able to envision it. So that's the only thing with like the lo-fi stuff. It takes a little more imagination to envision it. But the big thing that we need to nail is the mechanisms, getting working together, getting the proportion of what we're trying to do. And then we can you know, paint it all and make it look cool. So Dave, you know, again, he was saying he's pretty sure he has all that stuff. I think a lot of us have that stuff. Dave is saying committing Harry Carey to save Rachel honor. So I think we have some options here. You know, we'll pick one of these guys to act as our abdomen. We'll start to think about this. I'll also post the rest of these designs. I had done a bunch of research, and also this is not the first prototype, so that's why, you know, I've been able to move a little bit more along on what we've been working with, but we have more ideas to add to this, but this is kind of based on the research I had done initially. So we have our spider head and our spider. Here's a platform. Here's an example of a servo that's going to pull a string, which will cause this leg to bend in and out, made of this nylon type stiff material. Don't get like the little loosey-goosey aquarium tubing. That stuff is too, you know, too soft. An idea for maybe what the head will look like. Now, we're not, you know, going to get to this stage. We're going to mock up a basic shape with the basic structure, but all of the fine texturing and things like that would come in a later prototype. A couple other ideas. We talked about some kind of web shooter, you know, so I started, there's a hinge here, maybe a wooden flap that opens up, reveals the web shooter. This can be our silly string can that we talked about. This can be, you know, the string, you know, and some kind of like, this one is spring loaded, so some kind of like stopper that comes out and the spring flies out. If it's silly string, it'll be maybe a servo rather than up here, down here, that depresses our snout, you know, and then the silly string comes up. If this is in a string or in a tree, it can work much the same, although we may not need the pop-up mechanism if our spider is suspended from the tree. Here is another view of the pop-up, you know, and here's a couple stoppers, so when the lid comes down, it doesn't just kind of collapse on itself. And the little web shooter is not depicted, you know, here. And you can see I started kind of morphing towards a double-decker type of cart. One platform to have our decor on top of and control. I have 4 servos, you know, one for each of 2 legs. So that was an idea. Here's like spacers. Maybe this platform can be dedicated to our motorized situation if we do the motorized. If we do the hanging from the tree, that's, you know, then we can bag all this stuff. We don't even really need all this. And then we can just kind of like hide all this type of stuff here and put in a motor that will allow the string to go up and down. So I can make whip up a couple pictures with our spider in the tree idea, you know, or spider on the porch idea. Maybe ways of laying out our electronics to make sure we have room. I thought having a double decker gives us more surface to hide electronics. We can also put stuff in the skull. I'm leaning towards this skull right here because it's super lightweight, removing the jaw. And then let me undo the focus here. There we go. The manual focus, so it focuses where it wants, and hollowing out this section right here. That'll allow us to like put a whole bunch of stuff inside the skull, including speakers, little mini amplifier module, so we can actually, you know, hear the speakers. So I think we'll be able to hide a lot of things there where maybe we don't need the double decker, but perhaps having servos and motors all colliding with each other might not be a great idea. And then hiding this, you know, somehow with maybe grass, some decor and things like that. This was the original, like, when this kind of comes from Zelda. Zelda has a baddie called Skulltula, you know. It's a tarantula with a skull butt, you know, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. It's a very cutesy looking bad guy, you know, but so I tried to make mine a little bit more menacing. But you can see kind of like another version, simplified version of the double decker that I was thinking, plus some more about the leg movement. Here's a spring. I will say these nylons, once you use them a lot, and I mean a lot, not once a year, like you use this regularly, it does start to kind of like stay bented a little bit more. It doesn't spring back. It starts to spring back less and less. So one idea I had was putting a spring here to compress, you know, so that way the leg would spring back in place. and then a servo to pull another string that would then bend it. So the servo would pull to bend, and then when the servo let go, the spring would automatically allow it to pop up. Because this is a Halloween used once a year, I don't think we're going to need the spring. We're not going to be bending it enough for it to kind of start to lose its springiness, you know, and then I hit it in a spider leg design there. So all, you know, based on the original prototype that we put together, these ideas started to kind of come out. But as you can see, because we took the time now to actually do research and come up with some ideas, a lot of times we do this, you know, I do this on my own. It's also helpful to have a group of people, just like we did. We already came up with way more ideas than I had already come up with on my own. So even better. Means the project is going to be even better. So we have our ideas. We went through the entire kind of compressed version of the engineering design process. So now whatever we come up with, not that it'll be perfect now and it's going to work, but it's going to improve our chances of getting this thing to work. And it's okay to go back and forth in that circle. And that's actually an objective. If you get all the way through with no hiccups, probably we could have built something better. It probably could have happened. You know, we undersold ourselves a little bit. So we're going to try harder. So hopefully we will run into a couple snags where we have to go back, you know, a couple times, but not enough times that we miss our deadlines. So that's, you know, that's where this design process kind of helps things out. So guys, if you have additional ideas, definitely head over to the community. If you're interested in proceeding with the rest of the course, check the link below. It's got more information. You can see what's coming up, kind of more brainstorming, more actual building. So we start with the actual building next week, where we are going to take this piece of styrofoam and start carving out some kind of basic form. We're going to start taking our balsa wood and figuring out how we're going to start laying this thing out, if indeed we create a platform. I think whether we go with the idea from the hanging from the tree or the motorized cart, we're going to need some kind of like platform to anchor all this stuff and have a surface to mount all of the electronics below. Now, you know, we'll cut this to shape and all that, but we're going to start, you know, I'm going to cut this ball in half so that way it's not so bulbous, you know. All right, and Dave is saying you have the most important tape, which is duct tape. And yes, although not on the list, we have to have duct tape's evil twin here, which is our, you know, our zip ties there. So guys, I invite you to come along on this journey. Definitely check out the link below and we start building. It was, I'm not gonna lie, it was really tough this time to like keep both hands duct taped to the workbench, so that way I don't start taking things and start building and being like, yeah guys, you guys follow that design process, I'm gonna start building here, and then things just start to go like haywire. So I had an awesome night with you guys. I hope you guys learned a lot. I know I sure did. It's great to go through these exercises, and we are going to hit that nitrous on our productive fails and, you know, come up with something even more amazing at the end. Have a great night. See you guys next time. Bye.